Look at this. It weighs about 1/164th of an ounce. It's small. It's quiet. To most of the Western world, it's a side dish. A fluff of white starch that sits under a stir-fry or inside a burrito. But don't let its size fool you. This tiny seed is the most powerful engine in human history. It has toppled dynasties, fueled the largest empires the world has ever seen, and today, it dictates the survival of nearly 4 billion people. That's half the human race. If you took away wheat tomorrow, the West would struggle. But if you took away rice, Asia would collapse. The global economy would go into a death spiral. This isn't just food. It's a biological machine that transformed our species. For thousands of years, humanity was split by a great wall of starch. In the West, we had wheat. Wheat is a dry land crop. It's individualistic. You plant it, you wait for the rain, you harvest it. But in the East, there was rice. And rice is a completely different beast. It's a semi-aquatic grass that requires more labor, more water, and more social cooperation than almost any other plant on Earth. Because rice produces more calories per acre than wheat, it allowed populations to explode. It's the reason why, for most of recorded history, the centers of global wealth and power weren't in London or Paris. They were in Chang'an, Kyoto, and Delhi. This grain created a demographic density that shaped the modern world. But how did we get here? How did a wild swamp weed from the Yangtze River Valley become a global obsession? The story of rice is a thriller. It's a story of the domestication war, where humans spent 2,000 years trying to convince a plant not to drop its seeds in mud. It's a story of rice as money, where samurai were paid in grain. And the world's first Wall Street was actually a rice exchange in Osaka. It's a story of dark genius, where the wealth of the American colonies was built not just on the labor, but on the stolen agricultural expertise of West African rice farmers. And finally, it's a story of molecular art. The difference between a sticky grain of sushi rice and a long, needle-thin grain of basmati isn't just a kitchen preference. It's a window into the DNA of the cultures that grew them. We are tracing the 10,000-year biography of the grain that fed the world. We're going to look at the engineering marvels of the stairways to heaven, the chemistry of the perfect risotto, and the high-tech miracle rice that saved 1 billion people from starvation. By the end of this journey, you will never look at a bowl of white rice the same way again. So, grab a seat. We're heading into the mud, into the kitchens of kings, and into the future, our planet. This is the epic history of rice. You are watching Taste of History. To understand how rice conquered the world, we have to go back to a time before cities, before writing, and before the Great Wall. Roughly 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, the planet was warming up. In the humid, marshy lowlands of the Yangtze River Valley in what is now China, a wild grass was growing. Its name was Oryza rufipogon, and if you saw it today, you wouldn't think dinner. You'd think pest. Wild rice was a scrawny, fragile thing. It grew in stagnant water, surrounded by mosquitoes, predators. But more importantly, it was shattering. In the world of botany, shattering is a survival mechanism. It means that as soon as the rice grain is ripe, it falls off the stalk and into the mud. For the plant, this is great. It's how it reproduces. For a hungry human, it's a nightmare. If you try to harvest wild rice, the moment you touch the stalk, the food disappears into muck. Our ancestors had to spend thousands of years looking for them. Mistakes. The rare mutant plants that didn't shatter. Those mutants were the key to our survival. By saving those specific seeds and planting them again, we forced the plant to change its DNA. We literally broke its ability to reproduce without us. But why did we put so much effort into this specific grass? Why not something easier? The answer lies in the rice plant's secret weapon, the parenchyma. Most land plants have a problem. Their roots need to breathe oxygen. If you overwater your houseplants, they die because the roots drown. But rice developed an internal plumbing system. It has hollow tubes in its stems that act like snorkels. It pulls oxygen from the air down into its submerged roots. This gave rice and the humans who grew it a massive tactical advantage. In a tropical swamp, weeds are a constant threat. They steal nutrients and sunlight. But by flooding a field, humans could kill off almost every other competing plant while the rice sat there, breathing through its snorkels, perfectly happy. This was the birth of paddy. It wasn't just farming. It was the first massive engineering project in human history. To grow rice, you couldn't just throw seeds on a hill. You had to level the earth. You had to build dikes and canals. You had to become a master of hydraulics. For decades, historians argued about where this actually started. Was it India? Was it China? Was it Southeast Asia? Archaeologists at sites like Hemudu and Tianloshan in China found something incredible. Layers of ancient rice husks, meters deep. Using radiocarbon dating and scanning electron microscopes, they found that as we move up through the layers of soil, the rice grains get fatter, and the shattering scars on the seeds disappeared. But it wasn't a straight line. For nearly 2,000 years, humans practiced pre-domestication cultivation. They were helping the rice grow, but the rice was still wild. It was a slow-motion dance between two species. We provided the water and protection, and the rice provided calories. And then, around 6,000 BC, something clicked. The rice became fully domesticated. It could no longer survive in the wild without human help. We had tied our destiny to a blade of grass. This is the moment where human society changed forever. Think about a wheat farmer in ancient Mesopotamia. He can dig a hole, drop a seed, and go home. But a rice farmer? A rice farmer needs neighbors. To flood a field, you need a canal. To build a canal, you need a village. To share the water fairly, you need laws. You need a leader. You need a calendar to track the monsoons. This is what sociologists call the rice theory. Because rice requires such intense, coordinated labor, roughly 3,000 hours of work per hectare, compared to just a few hundred for wheat, the cultures that grew it became more collectivist. They leaned into cooperation and community out of pure necessity. In the West, the hero is often the lone pioneer. In the East, the hero is the village that manages the water together. All of that, the architecture of our societies, our laws, our very personality traits, can be traced back to the requirements of this swamp weed. But once the village was fed, rice started to do something even more dangerous. It started to create power. It started to create kings. And that's where the story gets really interesting. To understand why the world looks the way it does today, we need to talk about math. Cold, hard, caloric math. If you look at a map of the world's population, you'll notice a massive bulge in Asia. For most of the last 2,000 years, more than half of the human beings on this planet lived in rice-growing regions. Was it because of the climate? The philosophy? No. It was the grain. Let's break down the numbers. In the pre-industrial world, a single acre of land planted with wheat could feed roughly 2 people for a year. That same acre, if it were a flooded rice paddy, could feed 6. Think about that. Rice isn't just slightly better. It is 3 times as efficient as its Western rivals. It is a super fuel. This efficiency created a feedback loop that changed human history. More rice meant more people. More people meant more labor to build more complex irrigation systems. More irrigation meant even more rice. But the calorie math goes even deeper. Rice has a secret trick that wheat and corn simply can't match. Double cropping. In the warm, wet climates of the South China Sea or the Ganges Delta, the growing season never really stops. Around the 11th century, during the Song dynasty in China, a new variety of rice was introduced from the Champa Kingdom in modern-day Vietnam. This was Champa rice, and it changed the world. Traditional rice took 150 to 180 days to mature. Champa rice? It took 60. Suddenly, farmers could harvest 2, sometimes 3 crops of rice in a single year on the same patch of dirt. It was like finding a way to make your bank account pay out interest every month instead of every year. This sparked a population explosion. Between the years 800 and 1100, the population of China doubled. This wasn't because of a conquest or a new king. It was because of a faster-growing seed. For the first time in history, a civilization had a massive, reliable surplus of food. And when people aren't worried about their next meal, they start doing other things. They build navies. They invent gunpowder. They print books. Rice was the venture capital of the golden age of the East. But as the population grew, the flat river valleys got crowded. Humans had to find more room. And so, they looked up. In places like the Philippines, Vietnam, and Bali, humans performed one of the greatest physical feats in history: the creation of rice terraces. They carved entire mountains into giant liquid staircases. This is where the engineering gets mind-blowing. You have to move water from a stream at the top of a mountain and guide it so that it flows perfectly into every single terrace, all the way to the bottom. If the water moves too fast, it washes away the soil. If it's too slow, it stagnates and the plants rot. In the Ifugao region of the Philippines, these terraces are over 2,000 years old. If you laid the walls end to end, they would reach halfway around the globe. This was all done by hand, no heavy machinery, no lasers, just an incredible understanding of gravity and physics. These aren't just farms. They're living, breathing monuments to human persistence. But there's a cost to this calorie math. Rice made these societies incredibly strong, but it also made them fragile in a very specific way. Because rice supports so many people, the society becomes locked in. You can't just stop growing rice for a year to try something else. If the crop fails, millions die. There is no backup. This created a culture of extreme precision and duty. In the West, if a farmer was lazy, he might lose some money. In a rice-growing village, if a farmer was lazy and let his dikes break, he could flood his neighbor's fields and starve the entire community. This grain didn't just feed people. It disciplined them. It demanded a level of social order that paved the way for the great bureaucracies and empires of Asia. But soon, rice would move beyond the village. It would become more than food. It would become the most stable currency the world had ever seen. Imagine for a second that you don't get a paycheck in dollars or euros. Instead, every month, a truck pulls up to your house and dumps 500 pounds of brown rice into your garage. You use that rice to pay your rent, buy your clothes, and even pay your taxes. To us, that sounds like a logistical nightmare. To a citizen of feudal Japan, that was just Tuesday. For centuries, rice wasn't just used to buy things. Rice was the thing. In the 16th century, Japan codified this into a system called the kokudaka. A koku was a unit of volume, roughly 180 liters. Why that specific amount? because that was exactly how much rice it took to feed one grown man for one entire year. The wealth of a daimyo, the great feudal lords, wasn't measured in gold or land area. It was measured in koku. If you were a 10,000 koku lord, it meant your land produced enough to support an army of 10,000 men. Your status, your power, and your seat at the shogun's table were all determined by a grain count. This created a unique social structure. The samurai, the legendary warrior class, were essentially government employees paid in rice. But here was the problem. You can't make a sword out of rice. You can't wear rice to a formal ceremony. To get the things they needed, samurai had to convert their rice into cash. This gave birth to a new, powerful class of rice brokers in cities like Osaka. These brokers were the middlemen of the empire. They built massive warehouses to store the tax rice, and they issued paper receipts, basically, rice I-O-U. Eventually, people started trading these paper receipts instead of the actual rice. It was easier to carry a piece of paper than 10 heavy straw bales. This was the birth of paper currency in Japan, and it was backed not by gold, but by the harvest. But then, the system got even more sophisticated. In 1730, the shogunate officially licensed the Dojima Rice Exchange in Osaka. This is a massive milestone in human history that most people have never heard of. Traders at Dojima didn't just trade the rice they had in the warehouse. They started trading future rice, rice that hadn't even been planted yet. If a trader thought next year's weather would be bad, he'd buy contracts for rice at today's prices, hoping to sell them for a profit later. They invented technical analysis, candlestick, charting which traders on Wall Street still use today to track stocks and complex hedging strategies. All of this high finance wizardry was developed by men in kimonos, trying to guess how much rain would fall in the mountains of Kyushu. The Dojima Rice Exchange became the heartbeat of the Japanese economy. When the price of rice spiked, the empire trembled. When it crashed, the samurai went into debt. It was the first time in history a society's entire stability was tied to the real time. Market value of a single food item. This system also made the government incredibly efficient and incredibly harsh. Because the tax was a percentage of the crop, the government had to know exactly how much every field produced. They conducted massive land surveys, measuring every square inch of mud. In many ways, rice created the modern surveillance state. To ensure the koku kept flowing, the government needed to know who was farming, where they were, and how many children they had to help with harvest. But while Japan was turning rice into a financial instrument, the grain was about to embark on a much darker journey across the Atlantic. It was about to become the engine of a global trade that would change the face of the Americas forever. For thousands of years, rice was an Eastern secret, but in the 7th and 8th centuries, the world began to shrink. As the Islamic caliphates expanded from Persia across North Africa and into Spain, they didn't just bring a new religion. They brought a new way of eating. Historians call this the Islamic Agricultural Revolution. Arab engineers were the masters of water. They brought ancient Persian irrigation technology, like the qanat, an underground tunnel system to the dry plains of Spain and Sicily. They introduced rice to the Mediterranean, along with lemons, sugar, and cotton. This is why, if you go to Valencia today and eat a paella, you are actually eating a culinary ghost of the Islamic Golden Age. The very word for rice in Spanish, arroz, comes from the Arabic al-ruz. Rice had officially crossed the threshold into the West, but it was still a luxury, a dish for kings and Sunday feasts. But the most consequential jump rice ever made was across the Atlantic to the Americas. And this is a chapter of history that was intentionally erased for a long time. When British settlers arrived in the Carolinas in the late 1600s, they were desperate for a cash crop. They tried silk, they tried wine, they tried olives. Everything failed. The land was too swampy, too humid, too unhealthy. But there was a group of people who knew exactly how to turn a swamp into a gold mine. Along the rice coast of West Africa, stretching from Senegal down to Liberia, tribes like the Baga and the Mende had been growing a completely different species of rice, Oryza glaberrima, for over 3,000 years. They were the world's leading experts in tidal flow agriculture. They knew how to build complex sluice gates that used the Dan's ocean's tides to push fresh river water into the fields while keeping the salt out. The slave traders knew this. They didn't just want laborers. They wanted engineers. They placed advertisements in Charleston newspapers specifically asking for Gold Coast Negroes who knew the rice business. This stolen expertise turned South Carolina into the wealthiest colony in North America. They called the crop Carolina Gold. It was a stunningly beautiful, long-grain rice with a buttery texture that became the envy of the world. But look at the cost. To create these fields, enslaved Africans had to clear massive cypress swamps by hand, working knee-deep in water, infested with malaria-carrying mosquitoes and alligators. It was some of the most brutal labor in human history. Historians now recognize that the Old South wasn't built on cotton, not at first. It was built on rice. The massive mansions of Charleston and the wealth of the founding father were quite literally extracted from the specialized knowledge of West African farmers. Every time you eat Hoppin' John or Charleston red rice, you are tasting a direct lineage to the West African rice coast. From the Carolinas, rice spread like wildfire. It moved into the Mississippi Delta, into Brazil, which is now the largest rice producer outside of Asia, and into the Caribbean. It became the ultimate survival food. It was easy to transport. It didn't spoil quickly in the heat, and it paired perfectly with the beans that were already native to the Americas. This rice and beans combination, whether it's gallo pinto, Costa Rica, or arroz con gandules in Puerto Rico, became the nutritional backbone of the New World. Rice had officially gone global. It had traveled from the Yangtze to the Ganges, from the Nile to the Guadalquivir, and finally to the shores of the Americas. But as the grain conquered the planet, something strange happened. Each culture began to manipulate the grain to fit their own identity. This is where the story turns from the field to the kitchen and the birth of the texture wars. Now we move from the fields and the counting houses to the place where rice truly captures our hearts, the kitchen. If you think rice is just rice, you're missing a world of molecular complexity. To a chef, a grain of rice is a tiny biological bomb of starch. At the heart of every culinary decision is a battle between two molecules, amylose and amylopectin. If you're eating a biryani in Hyderabad or a pilaf in Uzbekistan, you're looking for high amylose. These are long, straight starch molecules that don't gelatinize easily. This is why a perfect basmati grain, the name literally means the fragrant one, should be long, needle thin, and never, ever stick to its neighbor. In these cultures, clumpy rice isn't just a mistake, it's a failure of technique. But move east to Japan or Korea, and the preference flips. Here, amylopectin reigns supreme. These are branched starch molecules that burst open when cooked, creating that signature, sticky texture. This wasn't just a matter of taste. It was a matter of tools. If you're eating with chopsticks, you need the rice to hold together. Trying to eat loose basmati with chopsticks is a test of patience no once. One of the world's most famous rice dishes was actually an accident of preservation. Most people think sushi means raw fish. It doesn't. The word actually refers to the sour-tasting rice. In the 2nd century, people in Southeast Asia found that if they packed cleaned fish into fermented rice and salt, the rice would produce lactic acid, which preserved the fish for months. Here's the crazy part. For nearly 1,000 years, people threw the rice away. It was just a wrapper used to keep the fish from rotting. But during the Edo period in Japan, people got impatient. They didn't want to wait months for fermentation. They started adding vinegar to the rice to mimic that sour taste and ate the rice and fish together. In that moment of impatience, a global multi-billion-dollar industry was born. Rice went from being a disposable tool to being the star of the show. But rice isn't just for the elite. Some of the greatest dishes in history were born from the need to save every single grain. Take fried rice. You've probably noticed that if you try to make fried rice with fresh, steaming hot rice, it turns into a gummy mess. That's because fresh rice is full of moisture. Ancient Chinese cooks realized that rice needs to be stale. By leaving it out for 24 hours, the starches undergo a process called retrogradation. They crystallize and toughen up. This allows the rice to withstand the wok hei, the breath of the wok. In that 500-degree heat, each individual grain gets encapsulated in oil and aromatics without breaking. It's the ultimate no-waste hack that turned yesterday's scraps into a masterpiece of texture. While the East was frying rice, the West was stirring it. In northern Italy, they developed risotto, which is a masterclass in chemistry. Unlike other cultures that wash their rice to remove surface starch, Italians use varieties like arborio or carnaroli and leave that starch right where it is. By toasting the rice in fat, a process called duma, tostatura, they lock the center of the grain, and then, by slowly adding stock and stirring constantly, they rub that surface starch off into the liquid. This creates a natural, creamy emulsion. There is no cream in a traditional risotto. That sauce is just the rice's own DNA being manipulated by a wooden spoon. It's a dish that requires total attention. If you stop stirring, the chemistry stops working. And we can't forget the obsession with the bottom of the pot. In Persia, it's the tadig. In Spain, it's the sokarat at the bottom of a paella. In Korea, it's the nurungji. Almost every rice culture on Earth has a specific name for the golden, crunchy layer of rice that sticks to the pan. It is often the most prized part of the piece, the part you serve to honored guests. From the silky, soul-warming comfort of a breakfast congee to the coconut-infused nasi lemak of Malaysia, rice has proven itself to be the most versatile canvas in human history. But as we look at this global feast, we have to realize that the grain itself is changing. The rice your great-grandparents ate is not the rice you eat today. We are living in the era of the miracle, grain, and the stakes have never been higher. By the 1960s, the world was facing a terrifying math problem. The population was exploding, particularly in Asia, and the old ways of farming simply couldn't keep up. Experts predicted massive global famines. But then, a group of scientists at the International Rice Research Institute in the Philippines created a super grain called IR8. Traditional rice was tall and thin when it grew too much grain. It became top-heavy and fell over in the wind, rotting in the mud. IR8 was different. It was a semi-dwarf variety, short, stocky, and incredibly efficient. It could take massive amounts of fertilizer without falling over. IR8 produced 5 times the yield of traditional rice. It was dubbed miracle rice, and it is credited with saving over 1 billion people from starvation. But miracles come with a price. To grow this new rice, we traded away our diversity. A century ago, there were over 100,000 unique varieties of rice being grown across the globe. Today, the vast majority of the world's rice comes from just a handful of high-yield strains. We are also facing a new environmental reality. Rice paddies, for all their beauty, are a major source of methane. Methane, a greenhouse gas much more potent than CO2. As our planet warms, we are caught in a paradox. The crop that feeds the world is also helping to heat it. But the story of rice has always been one of human ingenuity. Today, scientists are developing scuba rice that can survive being submerged for weeks during climate change-induced floods. They are working on dry rice that doesn't need flooded paddies at all. And golden rice, genetically engineered to provide vitamin A to children in developing nations. 10,000 years ago, we were just clever primates, picking seeds out of the mud in the Yangtze Valley. Since then, rice has dictated where we lived, how we traded, who we fought, and how we cooperated. It has been our currency, our engine of empire, and our greatest culinary canvas. It is the silent thread that connects a street food stall in Bangkok to a high-end restaurant in Milan and a family dinner in South Carolina. When you look at a bowl of rice, you aren't just looking at starch. You are looking at the biography of our species. We didn't just domesticate rice. Rice domesticated us. Thank you for taking this deep dive with me today. If you learned something new about that bowl of rice on your table, do me a favor. Hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want to explore more hidden stories behind the foods you eat every day, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. I want to hear from you in the comments. Are you a fluffy basmati fan, or is sushi rice your go-to? And what food history should we dig into next? This is Taste of History. Thanks for watching.